part of the process people with when they are contemplating their alcohol use. The first thing is denial. And I think one of the first things people do is they just want to find comparisons. Like, I'm not as bad as that person. Oh, I'm not as bad as that person. I got a DUI, but there's a really good reason. It was, if I hadn't have been so stressed and We do this part of the process until we can't. You were twisting through seven. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Soberful podcast. I'm Veronica.
I'm Chip.
And we have a two-part podcast today. So this is going to be part one, and we're going to be talking about the cycle of grief, and we're going to be talking about the 4 tasks of mourning in the second episode, which will be the following week. So make sure you listen to both of them. Make sure you listen to this one first. But while we were getting ready for this, Chip, we are coming up to our 6-year anniversary.
Which did rather take me by surprise and make me feel even older than I normally feel anyway. But that made me just, because I would have, if you had said to me, when did you start? I said, about 2 or 3 years ago.
6 years.
Yeah.
So we usually do on our anniversary episode an Ask Us Anything. So we'll put some stuff out on social media, so you can ask us anything like personal, about sobriety.
How are you still alive? How are you still alive? Yeah.
Anything that you want to know. You can send an email or you can send us a message, and we'll gather some questions and we'll do an Ask Us Anything episode. So we're going to talk about the cycle of grief, and we're going to talk about understanding the process that you're in. And that we're always in processes, right?
Of some kind or other, yeah. I mean, for almost any kind of human interchange, there is, as you said, a process or a cycle. Like as we're going to talk about loss, and we're going to talk about grief, but also things like relationships. People get really stuck with this one, relationships, because there's a very clear cycle and process which all relationships go through. And if you know it, it's so much easier to understand and place because you're not going to be taken. If you know what's going on, you're going to be able to go, okay, well, this is what's going on. This is where I'm at now. This is therefore the action I can take or not take. But I think if you know what the process is, it makes understanding difficult things like relationships so much easier. And obviously, over the years, people have worked out, the cycle of change, for instance, is another one. That's another one where there's a process that change goes through. Decision making goes through a certain sort of cycle that is quite definable. And if you know where you are on that cycle of change, well, then you kind of are not going to be so freaked out by things. So there are quite a lot of things that have got well established, well thought through by psychologists and psychiatrists over the years, and if you know where you are in those situations, it's going to make dealing with a lot of life situations much easier. And this one that we're going to be talking about today, about grief and things like that, it's if you know where you are, it just makes dealing with it so much easier. You're not going to get ambushed. And I particularly feel strongly about this with the cycle of relationships, because it to me it's such a clear cycle that I see over and over again, and I've seen it over again in my life as well. But if you know where you are, it's so much less threatening. So let's do it.
I just want to say something else about process, because the pillar of process is one of the 5 pillars of sobriety, and process. This is process work. It's understanding yourself better. I found it tremendously helpful to understand what process I was in. I mean, I was just like flailing about before that.
Yeah.
For example, I would have a process whenever I did anything academic because of my dyslexia, and I would have a panic freak out part of the process, which before I realized what was happening was when I would quite often exit because I was panicking, freaking out. Now I know that's going to happen, and it will go and it will subside, and then I'll go to the next part of the process where I'll get a bit more clarity and a bit more understanding. And then at the end of the processes, I'm typically okay, and I've done it and gone, that I can do that now. Like, that will make sense to me.
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm in my panic, I'm like, it doesn't make sense. It's never going to make sense. I'm never going to get it. I'm going to fail. I'm going to look stupid. But at the end, I'm like, oh, right. Okay. I'm really glad I kind of stuck with that. So understanding your process, where you are in a process and what process you are in, will be incredibly freeing and helpful. And it will help you grow, help you prevent you making mistakes going forward,
Yep.
exiting things when
Absolutely.
really you with a bit of help you could have gone through it. But the most classic is the grief process. And I think really we're always in and out of the grief process. It's not just when someone passes away, right? We're always going to be in and out of that in different ways, because it's about when things
Yeah.
end and about
When
loss, and that's part of
yes.
life.
I mean, and that can be as that process can be as simple as losing your wallet. You can go through that process over something as simple as that. I mean, first of all, just to outline the headline parts of the process: denial, bargaining, anger, depression, acceptance. Now, as you said, it usually applies to, it's often applied to somebody dying or something. But if I was to take the example of losing my wallet, I will come back home and I look and I haven't got my wallet on me. First of all, I will look for it. I'll be in complete denial that it's lost. I will start searching through my bags and things. Then I'll search through the pockets I've just searched through already. And then I'll go back to the bag I've already looked through. It's not there. I'll search my car. I'll turn my car inside out and backwards. Then I might even start going back to the shops I've been to. And then I'll probably look in the coat again. I'm in complete denial that the wallet has been lost, or the purse, whatever you call it in America. And then I start the bargaining thing. Well, if only I hadn't been so rushed. If only I wasn't so stupid. Why am I always in such a hurry? If only I hadn't done this, and if only and I hadn't done that. And oh, you idiot, you stupid idiot. You're always doing this kind of thing. You're always doing this kind of thing. And then, that might go on 3/4 of the day at least. And then eventually getting really sort of looking at all the kind of ramifications of losing my wallet and getting really low and depressed about that. And maybe 3 days later, accepting I lost my wallet. I had to do a whole lot of stuff. So that's a really simple, everyday example of how that process can enact itself. But I mean, I think there are obviously the first stage is denial. Can't believe that something's happened. Can't understand it. I've lost my job. I don't understand. I didn't,
Surely there's a mistake.
Yeah, it must be
There's
a
a glitch.
mistake.
There's a
Yeah,
glitch.
yeah, there's a glitch. This can't be me. It must be for somebody else. Very quick. And that denial stage it can be a split second almost to, what's everybody's first reaction on being told some really bad news? They go, no, that can't, I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, so that denial might only last 30 seconds until you're given more information. But it can obviously last a long time. It can last a really long time, where people just cannot accept that, for instance, have quite a lot of denial about the fact that I can't really because I've got 2 full knee replacements, can't really use my legs the way that I used to be able to do that. So I think that probably took me about 2 years to kind of get over the fact that you're not the same physical individual that you were before. I was in complete denial about that. Yeah. So I think that denial stage can be very fluctuating. And it's got nothing to do, I think what's important is also it's got nothing to do with your strength of character, which I think it gets muddled up with some, certainly in Britain, pull yourself together, don't worry, it was just a wallet, or it was just a job, and just that, or it was just a battalion of soldiers, or whatever it was, it's just, just that sort of very British, just don't make such a fuss about something, But these things do affect us.
Yeah, and you can see how this part of the process people with when they are contemplating their alcohol use. The first thing is denial, and I think one
Yep.
of the first things people do is they just want to find comparisons, like, I'm not as bad as that person. Oh, I'm not as bad as that
Yep.
person. Like,
Yep.
I got a DUI, but there's a really good reason. It was, if I
Yep.
hadn't have been so stressed and again, you said it can happen in 30 seconds or it can happen over months.
Yep.
Of just telling ourselves a counter story to just kind of
Yeah.
keep pushing this reality away. And we do this part of the process until we can't do it any longer.
I know. I think in my experience, the denial around addiction and alcoholism is quite stunning in how it almost feels like a mental disorder, the extent to which
Yeah.
you can deny the absolute bleeding obvious. There's
Yeah.
bottles of vodka in your pocket. There's drink everywhere you've had, but maybe, as you said, you deny it because you've got a nice house, or you've kept your home, or you've still got a job, or you're not doing this. But I find it. I've done this for a long time, and I have seen people walk in. They stink of alcohol. They've got a bottle in their pocket. Have you had a drink today?
Oh, no, 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 no,
No, no,
no.
no, no. I had a glass of wine last night. That's probably what you're smelling.
Yeah.
It's jaw dropping at times how
Yeah.
strong denial there are,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, it causes a lot of people to lose their life through alcoholism because they just cannot accept the fact that they've got an alcohol problem for a
Yeah.
variety of reasons. They choose to deny the reality of what's going on.
Then we go into bargaining, which is the
Bargaining.
trying to figure, trying to find the third door, isn't it? There's got to be, like, if I just figure it out, okay, right, I get that this has happened, but there's got to be like another way, something I can figure out, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think the phrase "if only" is,
Mm,
if only I could manage it for 3 months and then have a little bit, or if only I could cut
mm,
down, if only I could only do it after 5 o'clock, if only I could, uh, if only I hadn't made that mistake, if only I hadn't been rude to that person. Lots and lots of if onlys, sort of trying to rewrite history. If
mm.
only I'd noticed when I fell over that time in front of, I was trying to think of somebody, it was to be inappropriate to fall over the Queen. Oh, well, no, well, that would be difficult now. But anyway, but yeah, it would be the King, the great King.
Have you not
Yeah,
accepted the Queen's death, Chip?
I probably am in denial that a man whose hairbrush I
She's
stole is
gone.
now king of this country. Yes. Um,
Newsflash. Chip
uh,
stole Charles's hairbrush
yeah,
when they were at school.
yeah. It's an old story. If you haven't heard it, I don't know what episode it's in, but it's there
Right
somewhere.
at the
But yeah,
beginning, yeah.
yeah. I think there can be a lot of if only. Yeah, I think if only I'd listened to that person. If only I'd paid more attention. Or if only I was. I think this is a common one. Is if only I was stronger and more. I had stronger will. If only I was more strong-willed.
Mm,
If only I wasn't so weak-willed. So and so seems to be able to do it much better than I do, and they can hold their drink. Why can't I hold my drink?
mm.
So I think the if only stage, it can almost kind
It's
of,
torturous.
yes, yeah, definitely torturous, but it almost goes kind of hand in hand with denial. It's kind of like the denial about having the problem, and the if only can interweave as well. As I said, if only I could just keep it to once a week.
It's like ping pong in your brain. You're just sort of pinging from like this sort of crazy possibility to like this. Well, maybe if this, that, and the other, and we, again, it's not. It's with everything. It's like that you've lost your job or a relationship's broken up. That's what
Yeah.
I would do. Like,
Yes.
if I can just sort of show them or persuade them or
Yeah.
make them jealous, or like I'm just like I used to do that a lot, like when a relationship ended, that bargaining, like if I can just figure out the formula to make them love me again.
Oh,
Um, right?
I was a shocker at that. If
Ugh.
it was badly, that almost a breakup of a relationship I've often talked about. But even after that had happened, even after I'd been really badly treated, I was still sort of pretending that I'd bought a birthday present for her. And well, you might as well have this present anyway. I bought it for you for your birthday anyway, so you might as well have it. Kind of thinking that as she opened the present, which would be super expensive, she'd go, "Oh God, thanks, Jim. Oh, and it's made me realize I've made such a mistake. I should never have left you. I should have stayed with you, because you've now demonstrated your affection by buying me this extremely expensive product, and therefore I will come back to you." And for some reason, it didn't
Oh,
work. I don't know. It leaves me, yeah, didn't work.
oh
But
God.
it was definitely a bargain. I'm going to bargain away this and
That
hope
this
that
isn't happening.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. The different ways we bargain.
Yeah.
I look back and I just think, oh my God, the things that you look back and you go, geez, what was I? But in the moment, we're in this part of the process and that's
Yeah.
where we are. And this is what I mean about it's really helpful to know this, that, oh, this
Yes.
is what I'm doing. This is what I'm
If
doing.
only I think also I think I got into, if only they can see how distressed I am, they will change their mind. So I will demonstrate huge amounts of emotion to show you how, which is then followed, and I think uh, it's a bit of a toss up about which comes first, depression or anger. But they definitely kind of interchange. Getting angry at yourself and other people. I think a classic way in which the anger can sometimes manifest itself is in a sort of a hospital situation where maybe people don't feel that the person who's died had got enough care from the medical profession. They're kind of in denial about the fact that they had terminal cancer or something, and they get really, really angry. They direct their grief onto individuals who they feel should have done a better job, and get really angry at medical professions, and sometimes with justification. But I think also there are other occasions when people um, deflect their sadness and their
Mm,
stress onto other people. I mean, yeah, I say sometimes it might well be justified, but I think there are quite a lot of instances where people get really, why didn't you do enough? You should have done more,
mm,
and that can be a way. And I think that anger and that depression, they kind of interchange, because we don't want to we don't want to be depressed about it. We don't want to, because we want to be depressed about it, but we don't want to be depressed. Nobody wants to be sad and depressed and
mm,
feeling really emotionally unhappy. I mean, nobody wants that, but it's definitely part of the process that you have to go through. And as I said, I get, with the example I I gave earlier about just sort of something as simple as losing a wallet. um, the anger was very, very self-inflicted. It was all anger at myself. It wasn't anger at anybody else. It was anger at myself for being sloppy, impatient, thoughtless, a whole litany of words that were about, me being an idiot, and it was all my
mm,
fault, and really, really giving myself a hard time. Accidents happen. Sometimes things drop out of our pocket accidentally, and we don't. It just happens sometimes. We when the rehab finished, and the way in which it finished. There was, for me, I went through that process there when. No, no, it hasn't finished. No, I'm still around. I'm still okay. And then, realizing that some sort of whatever trusty maneuver had got me out of the way, and then really hanging on to anger about that, and it doesn't. And that is actually probably still with me. It doesn't, even now as I've suddenly thought of that, I started talking about it, I realized that the anger I have about that situation, which is too long to explain and go into now, but long story short is it was unfair and it was handled badly and I was maneuvered. But I can still get really, really angry about it to this day. And it'd be interesting for people to think about things that they think they've accepted, which is obviously the last stage of this. Oh, really? Okay, we'll start talking about it, and we'll see how much acceptance you've got of it. Because the example I think I've given before is of people who've been in sort of war situations, particularly. The classic one would have been, and it's also tied in with a kind of historical history, the history of the way people are emotional. People who went through the First and Second World War saw terrible things, but never ever spoke about it. Never spoke about it, and yet then you put a camera in front of them 60 years later and they start talking about it, and they're in bits. They're sobbing, and they haven't accepted it at all. They are still really, really depressed and affected by it. And yet, to the outside world, you'd think that they had, gone through all the processes, but they haven't.
We can dip back into it. Yeah, we can dip back into. And I sometimes this is why we're in and out of this process for different things. And if we go back into it, then I'm not surprised, Chip. I'm really not surprised that you feel like that. I feel like sadness because Focus 12 doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. No, it can kick off really easily. And I think, so to sort of, to bring it back to sort of alcohol, I think, everybody goes through a period of time where they don't think they have a problem. I mean, that's part and parcel of the condition. Everybody thinks, no, I don't have a problem. They have a problem. I don't have a problem. I'm not as bad as them, etc., etc. All those little tricks that we have. I've still got a house. They haven't. All those sort of things that we do. And then, well, if only I can kind of somehow bargain a way of dealing with it when I don't. I kind of know in my heart and hearts I can't deal with it, but I'll keep on finding ways. I'll keep on changing. One of the symptoms of alcoholism or alcohol dependency, whatever you want to call it, is continually trying to stop drinking. That's actually, people who don't have a problem don't keep on trying to stop drinking. And actually, continually trying to stop drinking is actually sort of bargaining. You're trying to bargain your way out of the problem. Well, I'll show them. I'll go 3 weeks without a drink, or I'll go 3 months, or whatever. And then there's a lot of anger and depression. And again, I think with alcohol, that does tend to be a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of fear of people's opinion of us. If we are coming out of active drinking and facing life in recovery, I think we do carry into that journey quite a lot of shame, quite a lot of guilt, quite a lot of distress at the way we've behaved. And we've got to try to learn how to get to the final point of accepting that all those things that we did and thought and acted out were part of you and your drinking, and try to accept, because how many people have you known who have years later are still giving themselves a hard time about how they were, rather than moving on a little bit. But
and then sadness is really, it's such a necessary emotion. It's such a necessary emotional experience to be in your sadness. And I know that was a feeling I tried to avoid at all costs,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it scared me. I remember one of my best friends died the morning after I met my husband. So we had our first date on a Monday night, and she passed away the next morning. And I remember, like, I went very quickly in a matter of minutes through the first part. Like, what? This can't be. No, no, no. What if I this is like, God, you've really messed up here,
Yeah.
and into sadness. And I felt myself, I almost could feel it coming, and I was like, no, no, no. And then I kind of opened myself up to the experience, and I realized from that how necessary it was because it honored and validated our relationship.
Yeah.
And it was the cost of the relationship.
Yeah.
And I felt, if this is the cost, then I'll gladly pay it. And I can only describe it as there's something quite beautiful about the experience, but it's not one that I want to have again, although I know I will. I just feel it's really, really necessary. And it's about really, really being in your feelings. And for people who do anything to avoid their feelings, I found it a transformational experience.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think people find it easier. I mean, I think people who have dependency problems are usually quite emotional people. And
But it's unbalanced emotion. It's unbalanced though, isn't it? It's not. I
well,
agree, but it's like we overreact to things. I think
when we're actively drinking, yes, but I think I
not
was
even
at,
then. I don't know. I think our emotional lives are quite unbalanced in that period of our
they
time life.
are, but I was thinking how people will get very upset about somebody else, but if certainly in therapy, the number of times people tell me something really distressing about themselves, and they start to cry and they go, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And they'll reach for the tissues or something and they'll try and stop the crying. I go, why are you doing that? Why are you stopping yourself from letting yourself work through this process? Because you're kind of remaining in denial. You've just told me something really sad has happened. Go with it. Be unhappy, be sad, be depressed, because that's an appropriate reaction to what you've just told me. You've just told me something awful. Don't apologize. I mean, it's maybe, I don't know whether it's in a British thing, but really just the slightest bit of tears and people will be really apologetic. Oh, I'm so sorry I got upset just then, and it's like, well, crying I think is an underrated process. I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's a very therapeutic thing, crying.
yeah.
I think
Agree.
it's, yeah, I think it's and I think it's very emotionally draining, but I think it's underrated. I think we should,
Mm.
I think I thankfully, I don't mind crying. I'm not ashamed. I'm not well, why would I be ashamed of crying? But people are. I don't have any problem being tearful in movies or being tearful with situations. I'm quite comfortable crying, which is
I
interesting because my father was
Oh God, that
furious with
crying
me.
couldn't imagine crying being allowed in your family.
It wasn't one tear in my family, and I was told I was really over emotional. Yeah, no, it wasn't part and parcel there at all.
I couldn't cry in early sobriety. Like I could not cry. And then about 2 years sober, it finally sort of cracked open. Now I can't stop myself. We were just this morning before coming here. There was an event at my son's school where they all had to dress up as historical figures. So all
Uh-huh.
these 8-year-olds are dressed up as different historical figures, and then they all kind of they pretend they're waxworks, and then you press a button and then they say like facts about that historical figure,
Oh,
like
okay.
from sports stars to historical figures to
Right.
all kinds of people. And I was like holding back. It was so emotional, like these little kids dressed up. It was ridiculous. I'm ridiculous now. I can cry at anything
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a it's programmed into us, and it's a really healthy part of our process.
Absolutely. The tear ducts are there for a purpose.
Yeah. I want to talk about getting to the last stage, acceptance, but I also want to highlight that different cultures grieve differently, and
Definitely.
you described that sort of upper crust British
Yep.
kind of like, to show any feeling is a
Yep.
weakness, and
Yep.
the best way to do things is to not show feelings,
Yep.
and that's seen as superior. And then you have other cultures who are very, very loud and demonstrative and about their grief, whether it's when
Yep.
they, there's a funeral and they lose someone, or it's different things, and that just strikes me as being so much more healthier as the more superior method.
Yeah, so much. I mean, I think British people go, well, I say steady on, that's a bit extreme. Cry, there's no need for all that sort of waving of arm, But actually, I think it's really fun. It's somebody's going, I'm really bloody miserable here, and I'm going to let you know I'm bloody miserable, and I'm really, really upset. My husband's just died. I'm absolutely distraught. And I'm going to have a bloody good cry about it,
I think it's a more appropriate and honest response and process.
But I think it's really important to say, it's my grief. I'm entitled to do it the way I want to. Some people are incredibly good at it and manage things very well. Others don't. It took me a long time to get over the death of my friend Rob, and even now I've still got his photograph over there. That took a long time, but everybody's entitled to grieve how they want to. There's no special template. Yes, there is this process of denial, bargaining, acceptance, anger, and depression, or didn't quite get them in the right order then, but there is that kind of process. But how you do that, it's entirely up to you. If you want to, Queen Victoria did it in a really bizarre way, I think. She laid out her husband's clothes, a different set of clothes every day for the rest of her life. Even after, I can't remember how many, I think it was about 40 decades, she would lay out his clothes every morning for the next day. That is fairly extensive denial. I have a view that, sort of probably more Eastern cultures where there's a lot more kind of demonstrative expression of grief is probably ultimately emotionally better. But at the same time, everybody, the only thing I would say is I think holding it in is not a good way of dealing with it.
No, definitely not.
Holding it in the denial, pretending it hasn't happened, that is not an effective way of dealing with it. That's just going to cause you a lot of internal distress.
And then once we've been through all of these, the last place we get to is just acceptance, where, and sometimes this is stages. Sometimes the acceptance is a process, and sometimes we go back into the cycle and go through it again and get to a bit more acceptance this time, and go back in and come back to a bit more acceptance. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And everyone does it in their own way. I think the only thing I want to say is that moving through the process is the most important thing.
Yes.
But at your own time, it's when we get stuck, stuck in one of these things, and people do get stuck for years, just like you said with Queen Victoria, people get stuck. That's not healthy, and that's not good. And the second part of this, we're going to be talking about the 4 tasks of mourning, which I just think are really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And part of this process of moving on and accepting, but acceptance eventually comes.
Yes, it does. It does, and it can, as I said, it can take a different length of time for different people. Some people for a really long time. Some people amazing. And do you know what? As you were talking just then, that's one of the things I find, because I'm moderately kind of obsessed about my own death. Which is a ridiculous. Yeah, really. As if you didn't know. And I find it's like I'm a big presence in my family's life at the moment, and then there'll be a day when I die, and it really makes me sad that sort of a couple of years later, I won't be as much a part of their life as I am now. I can feel myself getting upset now. It's irrational and it doesn't make sense. But that's just, there's something about, oh yeah, do you remember how, oh yeah, I haven't, where's Chip? Oh, he died a couple of years ago. Oh, do I know? I don't know. There's something about sort of moving into the world of being forgotten that upsets me. I don't want to be forgotten.
Well,
I mean,
you won't be, Chip, because we've got...
That's my sort of a chronic example of my fear of abandonment. I don't want to be forgotten.
Death is the ultimate abandonment.
The ultimate. I just don't want to be forgotten.
You won't be, Chip, because we'll have hopefully a decade's worth of a podcast that will be out there forever. And people go, oh, I found this great podcast. Really, oh, go, oh, so sad. The guy, he died 25 years ago. Oh,
Yeah.
He sounds great. Well, don't worry. I've got the memorial and everything planned. I'll have a candle. We'll light a candle. We'll keep the flame burning.
Don't. It'll get. I'll go in a minute if we carry on like that. I don't want to die.
No, none of us do. None of us do.
I love life so much.
Well, thank God that you got to a point when you did.
Yeah.
Thank God you got
absolutely.
to a point when you did, right?
Thank God I'm alive. Yeah.
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 Okay. We're going to do part 2. So you want to listen to the next episode next week? If you're listening to it after it's come out, make sure you listen to part 2, where we will talk about the 4 tasks of mourning, which are very, very interesting about moving through this process. All right, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
See you next week. Bye.